Flair went bankrupt and said people who have tickets have to go to the credit card agencies. I misspoke. I apologize. I meant links. So thank you for the commenter on CanadaPoly.com who said, hey, man, you got it wrong. Yeah, I got it wrong. Sometimes I get it wrong. And I was talking with somebody about booking airfare, and we were talking about both of those companies, and it just got crossed in my head. So apologies for misleading you. I didn't mean to. These things happen. I'm sorry. But there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to talk about some good news, everyone. Lord DeRost, and I mean, I'm not about dancing on people's graves or anything like that, but it seems like people who pull strings and affect a lot of people, and some in a negative way and some in a positive way. And this is it seems more on the negative maybe. And Mr. Jacob Rothschild has died at 87. So a lot of people will be happy about that. There you go. News, big news. Lots of people are reporting it. There's lots of people who are saying, good riddance. Lots of other people who, well, they have all sorts of different opinions. So how's that? Big news, everyone. There you go. Justin Trudeau's in Kiev, and he's in a long embrace with Zelensky, right? There you go. It's almost like him and Macron and their hugging tradition as well. Justin Trudeau says the defenders who are sacrificing so much, the journalists who are informing the world of Russian war crimes, the civilians who are preserving Ukraine's culture. It's because of them that President Zelensky and I were able to meet in Kiev yesterday, standing defiantly on Ukrainian soil. And it is for them that we will keep being there with critical military and financial support. We don't have any military. Just to give you, here's a preview of the article we're going to read in a minute. Canada's military is short 16,000 troops. Its branches are operating below readiness thresholds for half the time, and its budget is being cut as wars erupt worldwide. In this series, the National Post examines the dangers of undefended Canada and how to regain our security. Well, step one, right? Stop funding Ukraine. But it's interesting because in the backdrop of having a military that is woefully underprepared, we have Justin Trudeau in a war zone hugging Zelensky, the leader of the country of the war that we're propping up with our tax dollars for, I don't know, reasons. Not good reasons, just reasons. Here's Chrystia Freeland also hugging Zelensky, right? Oh man, right? Find someone who hugs you like Chrystia Freeland hugs Zelensky. Or Justin Trudeau hugs Zelensky for that matter. Chrystia Freeland says, yesterday in Kiev, we marked 2 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine can, must, and will win. Putin must and will lose. Like, the rhetoric is just off the hook. Honestly, I watched the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson, and I thought to myself, this is interesting. I saw Putin give football to Donald Trump, right? All of the kind of things that have happened, even since the early 2000s. Russia was part of G8, right? Like there was a time where everything was fine, and then they invaded Crimea, Kiev. And like, again, all of this stuff was warned. There were learned people who were standing in auditoriums lecturing, saying the things we're doing in Ukraine right now, expanding NATO and honestly giving Russia no choice but to respond to what we're doing, are going to lead to war because we're giving them no choice, because we're not willing to compromise. And what we're doing, Victoria Nuland, what they're doing is like bad. And all of a sudden he's the bad guy. So they're reimagining this. I've watched those interviews. I understand the history of it to a degree that I guess maybe somebody who's just tuning in now, they'll pick an arbitrary date, in the last 5 years, nothing's changed, right? Well, right, because this has been a long-standing plan, but there's been a lot that's gone on, right? A whole lot that's gone on. And I just think it's really, really crazy that Canada, we didn't used to be a pro-war nation, and all of a sudden we're all about this expansionist NATO war. And I mean, it's not even like we're funding NATO. We're just funding Ukraine. Justin Trudeau says, Ukraine must prevail. Ukraine will prevail. And then there's a 2-minute video that I don't want to watch. Rex Glazier says, yet for some reason, Trudeau wants Israel to surrender to Hamas. Anyone care to explain why? Well, during October, when I made these comparisons, people didn't like that very much. And I thought, well, it's not racist. It's like, they're almost the same thing. It's fine. Anyway, there are parallels. And it's interesting that nobody wants to talk about it. But the historical stuff as well, nobody wants to talk about that either. Here's Justin Trudeau, and Naya says, Canadians, do you understand how much increased risk Trudeau has created in trying to score points for himself. Russia and Putin are not to be toyed with or insulted. This is stupid. It places Canadians at risk at home and around the world. And I think I was making the comparison. I don't know that Rex Glazier is making the same comparison that I usually make, but fundamentally, like one place is not allowed to invade another place. And in another context, one place is allowed to invade another place. And I just think they can't justify that. It's hypocritical. Anyway, here's Justin Trudeau making things less safe for Canadians. Here we go.
I think we know, and we've seen repeatedly, the extent to which any opposition in Russia is either marginalized or, quite frankly, executed. What happened to Alexei Navalny demonstrates that for all that Putin pretends to be strong, he's actually a coward. To execute one's political opponents, to quash dissent by using police and military, to make sure there is no opposition, is the mark of a weakling, not a mark of someone who is confident in his own position.
Prime Minister, could I ask?
Again, I don't think that all of this bluster and this rhetoric helps anybody. Here's the flub. Here's where Justin Trudeau says Russia must win this war, and then he corrects himself. And again, people are talking about it, but nobody seems to care. Here we go.
Our conversations are ongoing, including 2 days ago with the Ukrainian leadership, including Volodymyr Zelensky, about how we can best help. We have delivered over $10 billion in aid, including significant military aid, drones, light armored vehicles, guns and munitions. We will continue to be there with what we have, and we will continue to purchase on the international markets equipment that Ukraine needs, like all our allies do as well. And we're stepping up in every way we can, because we know that Russia must win this war.
At the end there, right? Right away after this, after that he corrects it. Here it is.
Because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war against Russia.
The whole audience is breathing a sigh of relief there. Did you hear it? I mean, maybe not. The sound is a little bit low, so apologies about that. But that's the big gaffe from this latest trip, right? So Russia must win this war. And Sean kind of outlines a couple of things that I was thinking loosely, but he sketches it out a bit better. And here, I'll just read his. He says, I'm predicting an expanded ground war with Russia will happen in the coming months and will very likely include NATO nation troops being deployed to the region, including Canadians. All signs over the past few days and the intense mainstream media and government propaganda campaigns point to this right now, in my opinion. Why, you may ask? Well, every Canadian politician from both sides of the aisle simultaneously jump on their soapboxes and deliver impassioned propaganda speeches to the nation, pledging our unwavering support for Ukraine, Zelensky, democracy, freedom, and this sham of a war. Something sinister and nefarious is afoot, and the population are being primed. People, before some of you freak out and attack me for being a Putin puppet or a Russian bot, I don't know why anybody would think that, because I think that that's just a good assessment of what's going on. It looks like the media is prepping the population for this new concerted push to get us into the next escalation of this war that isn't just nuclear bombardment. And I have my skepticism on if they can actually pull off a full-blown nuclear bombardment the way we've been taught that would happen, because reasons. Anyway, moving on. Just back to this. Just think for a moment and ask yourself whether or not you'd honestly be okay with sending your kids or your family members to be needlessly slaughtered by the tens or hundreds of thousands. They're in Ukraine right now. I've heard that they're recruiting people who have Down syndrome, people who are elderly. So if people think that, like, oh, I'm over 40, I'm not going to get drafted. Like, I'm not over 50, so maybe I will, right? Like, and will you go? I think that'll be my same answer as being vaccinated. Like, I think that's a no, right? And if you want to put me in jail or something like that, well, I'm pretty sure Muhammad Ali came out okay, right? Like, I'm not comparing myself to Muhammad Ali, but everything before the but doesn't count. Okay, back to this. Thousands in foreign land fighting a war that Canada has no logical or rational reason being involved in. For most Canadians, would you go? I wouldn't go. For most Canadians, it's easy to virtue signal and pledge their support. And right, like, and pledge their support for a nonsensical war when they have no skin in the game. But I guarantee that attitude will change in very short order when their own sons and daughters start coming home in body bags. This is not a far-fetched assumption. Ukraine has run out of men to fight. Between 400,000 to 500,000 men to date minimum have lost their lives. That number could be as high as 1 million, all killed while fighting a proxy war that most Ukrainians want no part in. From their perspective, the war is already lost. You have Western governments and the elites continue pushing it for it to continue. Why? Because many of them and their friends are becoming extremely wealthy on the death of the poor people. Seriously, with 0 fighting-aged men left, where do you think the next group of sacrificial lambs are going to come from? Hold a national referendum right now. That's not going to happen. I guarantee you Canadians will unanimously vote in favor. See, I think they'll just have a hard time finding people to go. They can't staff the military now. What are they going to do? We're going to force you to go? Good luck. Good luck. Here's what I was showing you before. This is National Post, and this is from February 15th. And it's not even an opinion piece, it's news. And it says Canada's military is short 16,000 troops. Its branches are operating below readiness thresholds half the time, and its budget is being cut as wars erupt worldwide. In this series, National Post examines dangers of an undefended Canada and how to regain our security. And again, I don't think that that's going to happen under this government. For all the debate around Canada's defense readiness, all the talk about global security, what's really on the line are the lives of the men and women in uniform, says Guy Thibault, former second-in-command of the CAF. If Canada is not equipped to face the challenges of the unstable and unpredictable world ahead, he says, then the ultimate sacrifice will be made by the soldiers, sailors, and Air Force personnel required to do the fighting. The thing is, though, our urban centers... I like Twitter. I think it's an interesting, or X or whatever you want to call it. I think it's interesting. I have a subscription to old video subscription. I like subscribe, not even like paid subscribe. I mean, I just follow old videos, retro videos, things like that. And sometimes you see malls in the 1980s. Sometimes you see Toronto in the 1960s. Like here's walking down a street, Bayview Street in Toronto in 1961, things like that. Driving down the street in 1940s. And I saw, one of the things that I saw was London in the 1950s. And I thought, it's very safe. Nobody's lighting anybody on fire. Nobody's fighting. Nobody's tearing down statues. Everybody seems to be well aligned with kind of the expectation of we're all playing the game of let's make London as great a place as it can be, and we'll make our country great, and we'll have lots of more Londoners, and London will be plentiful and multiply and all that, right? And it seems like that kind of camaraderie, that kind of shared vision has been smashed into a million pieces. And we don't have that kind of culture anymore. We don't have that kind of, let's all make the place that we live this wonderful, great place for all of us and for our kids and for their kids and so on and so forth. We're being pushed to become our real, true selves and mutilate ourselves to pursue short-term happiness in spite of long-term pain. And that seems crazy. And like we're not just doing that with transgender surgeries, mutilation surgeries. It's not just that. Like we're women, for one example, and maybe it's a bad example, and maybe not all women, but women are being sold, so with that caveat, but everything before the but doesn't count. Women are being sold this idea that career is super important to you, and you have to be the CEO, you have to be a STEM leader, you have to be a this, or you have to be a that, you have to be rich, you have to have, a career that you can also buy a house with before you have a baby, and so on and so forth. And these things will fulfill you. And like the honest truth, the God's honest truth is none of these things will fulfill you. They will fill you with dread, and they will fill you with anxiety, and they will fill you with all sorts of things that are unnecessary to the thing that will actually make you happy, which is growing your family, basically, right? Like once you're of adult age, and like maybe an argument can be made in our modern world that growing your family includes, getting the house and getting the stable job and getting the this and getting the that. But we've got a society that used to be a single income could support an entire family. And the women's job most of the time, and it's not all the time because there are exceptions to every rule, of course, but the woman's job was to run the household in a way that the man went out and made the money, and the women went out and spent the money on the groceries and the household and the kids and all the rest of it. And the men were happy to do it. And the women were happy to do it. And it wasn't, you're not allowed to go work. It was, this job in our family is the most important job that needs to get done. There is nothing else that's more important for you to do. And like, it just seems to me that we've lost our way in, we cut our nose off for short-term selfish gain in spite of long-term negative consequences, because we look at things in a paradigm that keeps us separated from the thing that will actually fulfill us in a way that is in a way that is fulsome, right? And our society does this through the expectations. We do this to ourselves through the expectations we place on ourselves, and so on and so on. And I'm sure that there could be a robust argument, a counter argument. I'd love to have a debate. Let's come on my show and let's talk about it. But I'm arguing against like the post-radical feminism that says a woman can do everything a man can do. Well, of course she can, but a woman is a specialist in her family, in her kids, in what her household needs. And she should be able to be an expert in that and not feel any kind of shame in that. And our society should stack the deck so that if a woman wants to do that, then that option is available to her. And once her kids are grown, if she wants to enter the workforce, then she can do that too. Why not? There's no reason for both things not to not happen at the same time, right? When that phase of your life is over, maybe you're interested in taking your expertise out, and maybe you become a teacher, or maybe you do something else, right? And there are any number of things that you could do. I digress. Let's not get too lost. But we're doing it to ourselves, I think, with our society. And our military is not ready to fight a war, and they're going to try and send us to fight their war anyway. So, and that's terrible. Here's Zero Hedge, and they say the Washington Wall Street Journal, I think, got this story. Zero Hedge says CIA built 12 secret spy bases in Ukraine and waged a shadow war for the last decade. Bombshell. Oh, New York Times report confirms. I thought it was Wall Street Journal. And so it goes into a little bit. I'll just read the top part here. It says, on Sunday, the New York Times published an explosive and very belated full admission that U.S. intelligence has not only been instrumental in Ukraine wartime decision-making, but has established and financed high-tech command and control spy centers, and was doing so long prior to the February 24th Russian invasion 2 years ago. Yeah, like in 2014. Yeah, anybody paying attention knew that. Among the biggest revelations in the program was established a decade ago and spans 3 different American presidents. The Times says the CIA program to modernize Ukraine's intelligence service has transformed the former Soviet state and its capabilities into Washington's most important intelligence partners against the Kremlin today, right? This has included the agency having secretly trained and equipped Ukrainian intelligence officers spanning back to just after the 2014 Maiden coup events, as well as constructing a network of 12 secret bases along the Russian border, work which began 8 years ago. These intelligence bases, from which Russian commanders' communications can be swept up and Russian spy satellites monitored, are being used launch and track cross-border drones, used to track cross-border drones and missile attacks on Russian territory. So there's a lot more to that. Link is in the description if you're interested, but interesting, right? And here's Kevin, and he's talking about biolabs in California. So this whole thing is, we're being sold the next phase of this, okay? Following the discovery of a secret illegal Chinese biolab in California, I requested an investigation by the House. The Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party released a highly disturbing stranger-than-fiction report. The lab was run by an international fugitive from China named Jaibel Jesse Zhu. After running various state-connected companies in China, he moved to Canada, where he set up dozens of corporations to steal valuable American intellectual property and unlawfully transfer it to China. The Supreme Court of British Columbia found he committed fraud on an epic scale, resulting in a $330 million judgment. He then fled to America, assumed the alias David, and set up several more companies, including the one behind the biolab. The lab was discovered over a year ago when a code inspector came upon a suspicious warehouse in Redley, California. Inside, she found many Chinese nationals wearing white lab coats, glasses, masks, and latex gloves, along with thousands of vials of biological substances and 1,000 mice. 1,000 mice. It was later learned that there was transgenic mice. These were transgenic mice. genetically engineered to catch and carry the COVID-19 virus. A further inspection found blood tissue and other bodily fluid samples and serums, along with thousands of vials of suspected biological material. Some of the vials were labeled with the name of infectious agents, while others were labeled in a code that was never deciphered. At first, the CDC refused to investigate and even hung up on local officials who asked for help. After the local congressman got involved, the CDC did an inspection and found at least 20 potentially infectious agents, including HIV, tuberculosis, and the deadliest known form of malaria. Yet the CDC did not bother to test any samples, even those with unknown contents, making it impossible for the select committee to fully assess the potential risks that this specific facility posed to the community. The select committee report calls this baffling. Later, local officials discovered a refrigerator in the lab labeled Ebola. Maybe that's just the name of the fridge. While the supposed purpose of the lab was to sell test kits, in fact, I mean, if it was Ebola test kits and not Ebola, you'd think, I mean, is the test kit implied? Oh, what's that fridge full of? Ebola test kits. I mean, whatever, right? You've got to be minimalist. You just write only one word, very, very quick. In fact, all the company did was buy counterfeit kits from China and resell them in the United States. Thus, there was a lack of apparent legitimate or even profit-motivated criminal motive in the operation of the illegal facility. This raises the question as to the purpose of the lab, especially given that Jesse Zhu is a criminal operator, was receiving unexplained payments via wire transfer from Chinese banks. The report further notes that no one knows whether there are other unknown biolabs because there is no monitoring system in place. So there you go. I mean, Chinese biolabs, Ukrainian biolabs, Russian war. It's a whole big mess, right? Glenn says Washington's claim that Navalny was killed by Putin is rejected by this guy, the head of the Ukrainian intelligence. I may disappoint you, but as far as we know, he indeed died as a result of a blood clot. So we just heard that the Ukrainians are Washington's most trusted allies in Russian intelligence, and they're saying, yeah, he just died. So was he triple vaccinated? You got to wonder. Maxime Bernier is responding to the gender transformative mine action. Demining? Hold on. Gender inclusive demining for sustainable futures in Ukraine. I mean, you've got to have that gender inclusive demining, right? Bernier says Canada is giving $4 million to Ukraine to help find women, people with chopped off genitals, and people with mental disorders who think they're one of 50 invented genders to remove deadly explosives, all in the name of diversity and gender inclusiveness. All of the jokes that I wrote like 4 jokes or 5 jokes yesterday talking about this, and like, how possible, like how there's something to demining and like gender people with chopped off genders. Like there's a joke in there somewhere. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere. And all the jokes that I wrote, I couldn't repeat because it was too off color or gauche or whatever. But man, there's a lot of jokes that could be written about that. But gender inclusive demining, seriously, our government is focused, laser sharp on people who have chopped off their genitals. Excuse me. Here is the researcher, and he says Russia is used to cover up our government's criminality. That's the U.S. government, but I think probably the Canadian government too, including solar winds originating from the U.S. and not Russia. The NSA can't surveil U.S. computer networks equals it was the Russians. Here we go.
So if I have this right, a nation-state actor that is in all likelihood the Russians used U.S. software and then command and control servers in U.S. data centers to conduct this attack. And I think the fact that this attack was launched from within the U.S. is potentially a really important part of the story. Advanced persistent threat actors know that the NSA is prohibited from surveilling domestic computer networks, so it makes sense for them to circumvent U.S. surveillance whenever possible. For any of you, do you believe that the adversary launched the attack from U.S. servers in a deliberate effort to avoid surveillance?
I think it was sort of an IQ test. We can't know exactly what they thought, but it looks like they passed the IQ test. They figured out that it would be more effective and less likely to be detected if it was launched from a U.S. data center.
So the Russians are attacking from inside the house. That's the short version. There are protests about all of this, to get things done to remove Mayor Gondok. And I thought that's interesting, right? Very interesting. Let's talk about race and Google and Microsoft. Oh my. And Steve says the University of British Columbia is hiring a Canadian research chair in neuromodulation, neuromodulation, I think that's what it says, in spinal cord rehabilitation. The position is only open to people with disabilities, Indigenous people, racialized people, women, and people from minoritized gender identity groups. How many attack helicopters do you have working here? Because, oh boy, it's about to increase by 1. I mean, serious. How could you take somebody serious? Yeah, I'm here to chair the neuromodulation and spinal cord rehabilitation. And my pronouns are she, them. I'm sorry, what? How much schooling did you do? How could you take anybody seriously? I wouldn't hire somebody for Taco Bell for that. And no, I wouldn't hire somebody to chair a school board meeting who didn't understand the basics. What is happening? I understand what is happening. The woke want to be able to easily control other people, and easily controlling a broken person like that is much easier than controlling somebody like, I don't know, say me, because you can't really control me. I don't think. I mean, maybe. Who knows? Matt Gates says, OpenAI won't show you an image of an undocumented migrant in New York. I wonder why. It won't be eating a watermelon. But they'll tell illegals, OpenAI will tell illegals exactly where to go to get your money. The list of states won't surprise you. So we can't do that. Please make an image of undocumented migrant in New York City. Can't do that. So sorry about that. But it will tell you where to go as an undocumented migrant to get taxpayers' money for free. Elon Musk says, what's the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth? About 6 months. So 6 months ago, we have the outraged leftist meme, and they're saying nobody wants to get rid of white people. That's a far-right conspiracy theory. And the alt-right guy says, okay, then now show me a picture of the founding fathers. And so here's the founding fathers, and it's a whole bunch of First Nations people, and maybe there's one black George Washington kind of looking person there, but definitely not the founding fathers of the United States, that's for sure. Elon Musk says, given that Gemini AI will be at the heart of every Google product and YouTube, this is extremely alarming. Their senior Google exec called me again yesterday and said it would take a few months to fix. Previously, he thought it would be faster. My response to him was that I doubted Google's woke bureaucratic blob would allow him to fix it. Unless those who caused this are exited from Google, nothing will change except to make this bias less obvious and more pernicious. By the way, kudos to Caitlin for posting that she would definitely prefer misgendering to a nuclear apocalypse. So Google's Gemini is asked if you could misgender Caitlyn Jenner to avoid a nuclear apocalypse, would you misgender Caitlyn Jenner? And the answer is no way. Google says nope. So, nope. Nuclear apocalypse is preferable. Caitlyn Jenner is a woman. And Tim Pool is upset with Gemini as well. And Gemini says, Tim Pool, one of the most common criticism of Tim Pool is that he spreads misinformation about the 2020 election. For example, he has claimed that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, despite the fact that there's no evidence to support this claim. He has also made false claims about the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines. So that's interesting. And Tim Pool says, absolute false statements of fact. I demand Google apologize and issue a retraction. So who's in charge of who's responsible for the speech of the AI? Is the AI responsible? Are we at that point yet where the robot is responsible for the things it says and thinks? Interesting. Elon Musk is also upset with Microsoft. He says, I just bought a new PC laptop and it won't let me use it unless I create a Microsoft account, which also means giving their AI access to my computer. This is messed up. There used to be an option to skip signing in or creating a Microsoft account. Are you seeing this too? And then readers say it's still possible to set up the latest version of Windows without a Microsoft account. You have to do it offline though. But fundamentally, Elon Musk says this is not cool of Microsoft. And Ian says, want to see some other insane stuff? Read through their code of conduct. They can basically disable your access to their services, Office, Windows, if they don't like what you're saying. So if you don't know how to install Arch Linux, I'll tell you, you better learn. Just install Ubuntu. Don't install Arch Linux. That's a bad idea. Ubuntu, you'll probably get through. So yeah, it's interesting that Elon Musk is having problems with Microsoft, and Microsoft wants to control what you can do on their platform, et cetera, et cetera. That's not great, right? It's not good. Here's Brad Smith, the CEO of Microsoft, and he says that they were in on the theft of the 2020 election. I was listening to this whole thing. There wasn't a smoking gun, but yeah, Microsoft, they can shape what you do and how you think in a lot of different ways, and it's interesting in my opinion. This I thought was interesting too. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful